My mom was a very religious person growing up, and she had her own.
We are going into this one completely blind, ladies and gentlemen. I have no idea what I am about to get myself into. The McKinney Family Home videos may seem like an innocent collection of tapes at the surface, but I can guarantee that deep down there is something much more sinister taking place. This series was recommended by all of you both in the YouTube comments and in the community Discord, so by all means keep them coming. Seemingly a total found footage style, pushing this away from the typical analog format, and more in the realms of something like Blair Witch and Paranormal Activity. The series consists of 10 entries, and the only description available to describe the channel is just, "My cherished memories." That doesn't sound ominous at all. I can't even guess where the series could possibly take us, but as always, there's only one way to find out. As always, be sure to check out the original series and show support to the original creator before heading on over here where we attempt to survive the fears together. Just as a safety precaution, I recommend getting your special safety gear just in case anything tries jumping out of the screen to attack. But before I let you get too far, just wanted to say if you're new here and enjoy what you're watching, be sure to hit all those neat buttons down below as it really helps support the channel. And if you want to see more, be sure to follow us on Instagram and Letterboxd. Alright, now you can pass through. Move In 1991. Tape 1. Our first tape takes us to September of 1991, and after a long process, this family has finally gotten their new home. Our cameraman goes around to give us a tour around the outside, and it doesn't take long for something to stand out as odd.
Well, that's a little weird. Probably something to look into. But
if I had to guess, it looks like a screen door laying in the dirt. Even though the house definitely seems haunted, it does seem to be in a nice secluded area away from civilization, which makes any horror antics perfect. Another thing that would be a cause for concern is the fact that it looks like the doorbell has been ripped off. But who knows, perhaps there's an explanation. We find ourselves getting the inside tour. We see the early Halloween decorations, the bedrooms, and then we get to the creepy basement. Our cameraman doesn't even know if he's going to want the kids going down there. To make things even better, there is no working power down there. A lot of their junk is getting moved down there, but there is also a lot of stuff the previous owners left behind as well. One of the more odd things that was left was what appears to be a wedding picture, which isn't something you normally leave.
You see that? Check this out. Who are these people? I wonder if these were the original tenants. I would hate for them. That looks like a wedding picture. I would hate for them to just not have their wedding picture.
Something to mention is that it sounds like this move may be an attempt at a reset, as it sounds like our couple has been going through a tough time.
I'm super looking forward to it. I think the kids are really going to love it. I think that Jess and I really just need to start over with everything that's been going on.
But before he can finish what he's saying, the phone interrupts him. Our scene glitches out and the camera is set down facing the old wedding photo. As his phone conversation goes off in the background, our scene slowly gets more and more red. And from what he's describing, I'm having a hard time believing this guy's mom isn't up to something potentially nefarious.
My mom was a very religious person growing up, and she had her own series of rules. And when we moved out here, this was the church that she recommended.
We might have ourselves in a similar situation to Hereditary, which for those who've seen that movie, knows it can only lead to something awful. Our entry ends off there, and there isn't too much to pull from just yet, as this comes across as just your normal house tour. Who knows when things are going to turn horrifically sideways. Bible Study 1996. Tape 2. Right off the bat, this looks nothing like how I'd imagine a Bible study. Our tape opens up and it looks like we are at some sort of petting zoo. Is the lady we see our cameraman's significant other? I sure hope not, since we very quickly cut to a missing poster for the very same lady. Something that will be important later is the fact that it said that she had a tattoo of a cross on her left wrist. Once that cuts away, we begin to follow a group of people walking along the street. I imagine this has to be the same family, since I doubt we would begin following a different set of people. Very briefly, however, we cut to some dark footage to where in the background we can hear some screaming. At first I thought this could be Halloween night, but from the looks of it, it appears we're walking through a cemetery. Before we got much farther, we cut to another missing poster, and wouldn't you know it, they also had a tattoo of a cross on their left wrist. Noticing a pattern, anyone? To make things worse, the eyes are listed as just missing. The scene we get after has us far off, but in the distance, it looks to be two people having some sort of interaction in front of a grave. Is this a conflict? Who's to say? Our tape goes full glitch out before we find ourselves at yet another grave, where we can briefly hear people conversing in the background before we get yet another missing poster. This one is definitely a bit more sinister than the others. For example, it says that what they are wearing is just shame, and wouldn't you know it, a tattoo of a cross on the left wrist. If I had to make a guess, it's that all of these missing people are members of this McKinney family. The description of the tape just saying, "They were all I had," also leaves me to believe this. We then get to our most telling piece of the tape. We hold on this shot of all these graves, and then text begins to appear. "We trusted you. Heaven is not yours." We get flashed a really distorted missing poster where a lot of the text is almost impossible to make out. The only thing I was able to catch is at the bottom it says "last seen, you left me." And if I'm being honest, looking at this person's eye may actually be one of the scariest feelings I have felt in a while. The last thing we see on this tape is what looks to be a church, with text that just says, "You're not welcome here." My suspicions are on Grandma. She's the one with the heavy religious background, and I wouldn't be surprised if she was the one this family was supposed to trust. And look where it got them all. So far, I have been getting heavy Hereditary and, oddly enough, Paranormal Activity vibes, where early on in the family lineage, some sort of deal was made, and now the current generation we are following has to deal with the repercussions. 3rd grade graduation, 1994, tape 3. As per predicted, things are slowly taking turns for the worse. Given the name of this tape, I can only imagine we have found ourselves at a very haunting looking school. We go around the outside a little bit, but pretty soon find our way inside. This definitely looks to be more of a religious school, but I mean, who is exactly surprised by that? You can hear some conversation happening in the background, but oddly enough, there is not a single person to be seen. The whole place is empty. Are they all at this graduation? Our character walks through the library, and it certainly sounds like some books mysteriously tumble down from behind. Before we get text that pops up just saying, "It wasn't here." What is it we are looking for exactly? Our tape glitches out yet again, and we see text that just says, "I begged you." Then being taken into a much darker area, we read, "Please not here." This is when the tape starts to give me some Skinamarink vibes, and for those who don't know, those vibes are absolutely petrifying. If you pick up, the devil will answer. This is making me think back to how many times in the first tape our character was consistently getting interrupted with phone calls. We don't know who exactly he was talking to. Could it have been the devil? Probably not, but it's fun to theorize. I feel like this next bit needs a warning for sounds of child death, so if that is just not something you're down to listen to, I recommend skipping to this moment. I would like to think that the horrific slashing sound isn't violence being inflicted on the child we can hear. Perhaps they are just a witness to an event. The last thing we are met with in this tape is a set of houses. Definitely not the one we saw in the first tape, with text that just says, "I won't come home again, but only you know why." I gotta be honest, I truly don't know what could be going on here, but there has to be some sort of cult operating in the background, but there's only one way to get our answers. Grandma's House, 1995, tape 4. If you thought it could... Oh no. If you thought it couldn't get any worse, boy, do I have some bad news for you. This tape begins, and based on the title, I can only assume this is one of the grandmother's homes. If I had to take a guess, I imagine it's on the father's side, the one with the heavy background in religion. Unlike the previous tapes, this one doesn't have us walking through the house, but acts more as a slideshow of images, and there isn't a single one of these that isn't just pure dread. It doesn't get any better once we are met with these bits of text. The screaming, it never stops. If this was the house we heard the kids were at in the first tape, I am deeply concerned for what could have transpired here. And by God, these images just keep getting more and more unsettling. It almost looks like a tornado blew through the place in some of these pictures. In one moment, it sounds as if someone is throwing rocks at one of the windows, to which we eventually hear the smashing of a window. Who in their right mind would want to break in here? We get an image of this table where the text just says, "This is my body. This is my blood." Perhaps some sort of sacrifice occurred within these walls. It's not enough. To which we get this very disturbing ending to the tape. Unfortunately, if I had to guess, it sounds as if a house full of children is getting burned down, with text that just reads, "I was never enough." If we had any doubts that Grandma was behind all of this, they are certainly gone now, especially given the description that just reads, "She laughs at us." Perhaps the text saying it's not enough is referring to the amount of sacrifices being made. As of right now, all we know is that this family moved into a new place in 1991, and then in 1993 there was a string of disappearances, all with the same matching cross on the left arm. We still don't know who these people could be, if they were a part of the McKinney family or not. But if anything remains clear, Grandma's house is somewhere you really don't want to leave your kids at. Christie Baptism, 1993. This tape had me questioning everything I was previously theorizing. We open up and are in the POV of someone booking it down the road, and based on the description saying my children are missing, I can only imagine we're on the hunt. Before we cut to our next scene, there is a very quick flash that at first glance just seems to be a little glitch, but it almost looks like a drawing of some sorts. I can't tell if this is supposed to be a child, but it almost looks more like E.T. if I'm being honest. We pull off to the side of the road, and either this is our truck or someone else's that's been abandoned, but it's more than likely ours. Our character walks down the street, makes their way through the woods, and winds up at that abandoned church we saw at the end of the second tape. Just like Grandma's house, this place looks like a huge wreck. After doing a bit more walking around, we can hear some sort of loud noise that gets our character to stop. We then transition into the image format for one scene with the text asking, "Who is there?" My guess is that this could be some sort of spirit that inhabits this church, and we are able to distinguish the POVs from our cameraman and the entity that is now concerned that someone has entered their domain. A little bit more exploring, and we then see text that says, "I can't talk to strangers. Where are we going?" Is this entity speaking in real time, or is this a replay of a potential murder? Needless to say, I believe it's safe to assume whoever the text is supposed to represent is a child, given the comment on strangers being the biggest clue. In another brief frame, we can see a similar style drawing. It almost looks as if it's an image being burned over the footage. I'm not sure what it is I'm looking at, but the shapes of these figures look close enough to the childlike E.T. one we got at the beginning. An image opens up facing outside one of the windows before we get this revealing scene. He's hurting me. This almost makes me want to rule out Grandma as the threat, but I've got my eyes on her still. There's no way she is to be trusted. We exit the church and find ourselves back at the graveyard that was being explored in the second tape. We go further into the woods and more text appears that says, "You can hear me. I have been made pure." They definitely aren't wrong because we can certainly hear something sinister in the very next scene. A child desperately screaming for help before a cameraman runs in the other direction, seemingly towards the cries, or away from them like an asshole. I have seen God. I want to go home. And then the tape ends. If I had to come up with a final theory at our halfway point of the series, I would still say that this family is slowly dealing with the repercussions of some sort of cult-like deal that was made that results in harm down the family line. And I still have a feeling that Grandma is at the head of the cause. She is where the kids were left at before the family moved into the new house in 1991. And then in 1993, I believe it's safe to say they all went missing. given what we saw in the missing posters and what we saw in this last tape. I believe we're watching the father going out to try and find his missing family, whether it's just the kids or if he's the only one left. But for what purpose was this family sacrificed? I also believe the text we have been consistently seeing has been the voices of these dead children attempting to communicate through the tapes, in classic analog horror fashion. I really enjoy how the series was able to create that perfect blend of analog and found footage horror, taking us to these real locations and utilizing the environment perfectly to get that unsettling feeling that we are just not safe. Questions I still have, however, are what was being looked for exactly in the school in the third tape. Is it our father character looking for potential clues as to where his children are? Perhaps he began uncovering the sinister cult-like activity that had been going on behind the scenes and is looking for answers. Unfortunately, as of this moment, all we do is continue on with guesswork, as nothing is yet to be truly answered. Everything has been up to interpretation, and the jumping of years has not been making it very easy. I know you are all going to bring out your pitchforks for this, but we're going to be saving the next 5 tapes of this series for a part 2, so be sure to be on the lookout for once that time comes. But don't worry, I will 100% be coming back to this series because I'm going to be in need of some answers. And given that the last tape was uploaded a month ago, I have a feeling this series is far from over. Another thing I want to mention that I love is that this whole channel is playing into the part. It's not being uploaded as if it's an analog horror series, so you can imagine how disturbed someone would be if they were to believe this was supposed to be some old nice home videos. I don't know, I just love when these projects just go all in and attempt to make it seem as authentic as possible. But other than that, be sure to be on the lookout for when the time comes for us to revisit the McKinney Family Home videos to go over the second half of what's been released so far. Be sure to go over to the main channel to show support to the original creators, because this is still a relatively unseen analog horror series and it deserves a lot more attention. But other than that, I thank you all for making it to the end of this video. If you enjoy what you're watching, be sure to hit all those neat buttons down below, and be sure to keep leaving us recommendations on what works of art you would like us to check out and cover, whether it be in the YouTube comments or the community Discord server. But if you'll excuse me, I just learned my kids have gone missing and I need to go find them.